All right. Let me start off by welcoming everybody to this presentation. I'll be covering the topic around how enterprise architecture can reduce your corporate's IT spend. And this is basically the few topics of discussion we'll be covering today. Um, I want to start off by giving a brief profile presentation about myself, and then we'll get into the various topics of discussion. And I've basically been in the enterprise architecture space for the past 17 years. Have had the privilege of working with various organizations like Oracle, Airtel, Africa, Equity Group, to name but a few. And I've had the opportunity of working across Africa and Europe. And these are some of my accomplishments. Been able to work with various governments in Rwanda, Sierra Leone. Uh, as like I've mentioned, I've worked with Jubilee Insurance, Airtel Africa, Equity Group, to name but a few. And one of my biggest accomplishments in most of these organizations is being able to bring down IT spend. And that is why I am very, very passionate about this particular topic, because we'll delve into how I've practically been able to realize this in some of these organizations. So looking at the cost outlay for most corporations, this is what statistics have shown. We have quite a number of IT budgets being wasted on redundant digital assets that are currently there. And annually, we have around $2.7 trillion going into global waste. And we've also seen that from the numbers, around 72% of organizations lack IT architecture clarity. And we realize also that most of the IT budgets that are out there are over budget. And what are some of the reasons why this is happening? This is mostly because of, one, you have a lot of technical debt that you're paying for. You have what Chigo was mentioning. You have capabilities that are being done in multiple applications. So, and for these applications, you have to keep the lights on. You have to pay for the server. You have to pay for IT staff to run those applications. Those are redundant systems that are basically just taking in costs. You have legacy applications consuming a lot of IT spend. Because some of these, especially like in financial institutions where I have a lot of experience, you realize some of the core applications are running on very legacy, technology, which means that you cannot be able to take advantage of some of the advantages that are there in cloud, cloud environments. And then there's also poor visibility in terms of the total cost of ownership. What you cannot be able to measure, you cannot manage. So it's important that you have an inventory of your IT assets so that you're able to know for this particular business capability is running this particular application, and this particular application is running on this technology infrastructure. And this is how much this technology infrastructure is costing. Without that visibility, it's very hard for you to manage the cost. So then what is the root cause of this? One is that you realize that you don't have an architectural blueprint for your entire enterprise. It's important you have a very clear visibility of what your baseline is. What do I currently have? And secondly, what do I want to have? Yeah. Then lack of governance and investment decision framework. You've had Chigo talking about architecture review boards. They are very, very important from a governance perspective to triage projects that are to be onboarded and ensure that they are fit for purpose. They are going to meet the intended strategy for the organization. If for whatever reason a project is not meeting this criteria, then it's a very difficult decision that the architecture board has to make to drop it, which is a very, very important gate to ensure that you avoid unnecessary costs down the line. Then reactive IT purchasing versus strategic planning. For the blueprint, it normally comes up with initiatives that need to be done in the next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. So with that, you're able to strategically plan your IT spend and how capabilities are going to be onboarded onto an enterprise, rather than being reactive and doing purchases that end up increasing technical debt. And then last but not least is you lack when you have a lack of alignment between business strategy and your IT strategy, is going to create opportunities for this crisis that I've just spelled out for you guys. So that's a very, very strong preamble in terms of how this IT cost crisis management is brought about. So in terms of the various building blocks, I normally say that the most important one is the business architecture. It is the one that wags the tail for the others. I say that the business architecture is the head, because this is where now there is the mesh of the strategies, there is a meshing of the plans, there is a meshing of the capability mapping, and then all the others now cascade from there. So once you have a very strong business architecture, you're able now to have a very strong data architecture, you're able to have a strong application architecture and technology architecture. So using a standard like TOGAF, it gives you a blueprint for you to be able to have a very cost-aware architecture. Because in the various stages, there are various ways in which you can be able to start ensuring that you're able to do mitigation of unnecessary costs. Let me give, for example, like the vision, the architecture vision. You may have an architecture vision of going through a digital transformation phase where you have cloud native applications. So if at all you have that as your architecture vision, and in the process of an architecture review board, a project is brought on board that wants to bring on board very legacy technology like COBOL, for example. For you to run such an application on a public hyperscaler, it means that you'll have to spin up a VM. You can't be able to take advantage of some of the serverless architectures that are there. So at that point in time, you can be able to stop such a project and avoid unnecessary costs of having to run VMs in a public hyperscaler, which we know very well that they come with with cost implications. Another one is, for example, phases B to D, where you're looking at the business architecture going all the way to technology. So at this stage, you avoid duplication. If you have a capability in finance, for example, for making payments of invoices, another department that has the same capability, like for a bank, maybe treasury, they have access to maybe make payments. All payments should be centralized in finance, as much as maybe treasury may be able to make payments because they may have that ability. So at that point in time, you avoid having duplicate capabilities in different functions. Another one is having duplicate applications doing the same capability. So you have maybe an ERP doing procure to pay, and you also have another application that does maybe just invoicing. So at that point in time, as an architect, you ensure that you have the margin of these capabilities in one application. Same case for data. You have multiple data, most master datas, which leads to more storage costs and not having a single source of truth. And lastly, also technology. You have, VMs running instead of having, containerized cloud-native applications that are more cost-effective. Another important part that we have in the TOGAF standard is what we call opportunities and solutions, looking at how we can be able to reduce procurement costs. Will we rather buy or sell for a particular solution? So that kind of decisioning can be done at that stage and be able to help guide the business in terms of being able to de-risk projects going forward. And then migration planning, you sequence migrations to avoid costly rollbacks and downtime. Very, very key. Working closely, the enterprise architects, working closely with the project management team to ensure that the planning is done optimally. Implementation governance, this is where now it comes to the execution of the plans. You ensure that these governance gates across the project life cycle to ensure that whatever was approved in the architecture review board is actually what is implemented to avoid costly plans going forward. In the same case also for change management, enterprise architects play a very, very important role in ensuring that changes that are being made are not going to introduce any technical debt or unnecessary costs going forward. Yeah. Now, let's look at some practical aspects that I've actually used to help me in bringing down costs. One is the rationalization, which I talked about. In one of the organizations I've worked for, I was able to bring down the number of applications from 200 to less than 50 by doing what I'll call capability rationalization, going all the way to, I was using the ETOM standard, going all the way to the 4th level of the ETOM standard to ensure that there's a lot of granularity to avoid skipping any capabilities. And it actually brought about cost savings of around $25 million. Then cloud strategy is very, very important because now some of the capabilities that are there on the cloud, if you have codes that you're running, you can use maybe something like function as a service, and you'll only be charged when a function is executed. So when you're not using it, you're not paying for it. So that actually helps bring down your costs. Standardization, very, very key to avoid vendor lock-in. And it's important you have a standards catalog of all technologies that are going to be accepted in the enterprise. And this is actually now used in the architecture review board. If there is any technology that is not part of that catalog, don't have it in because there is a risk of vendor lock-ins and using legacy application. Governance, I talked about it. Another part that has actually helped me a lot in my career is reuse, where you're able to use architecture building blocks that have been defined in the past and solution building blocks. What does this mean? So, for example, you have a reporting capability. Instead of another department going to purchase another reporting tool, you ensure that that reporting tool can also be extended to another department in the organization. For them to reuse it, it's just a matter now of looking at how you can be able to increase the capacity for them to be able to use that particular capability. Then visibility, to ensure that you have complete visibility of your assets. I talked about that. Then another important thing that happens is eliminating shadow IT. Here's where technology is being introduced without the knowledge of the IT department. So you hear finance has gone ahead and procured a tool that is doing ABCD. Treasury has gone to procure a tool that is doing ABCD. This introduces, that unbudgeted spend, which now leads to ballooning of IT costs. Because now this particular tool that has been introduced most likely will run as a silo. So it brings about a lot of inefficiencies in how it's going to be run. It introduces more headcount to be able to ensure that it's able to run correctly. So this particular occurrence in most organizations should be reduced to a minimum, and having the architecture review board ensuring that any procurement of any digital assets has to go through that. Is normally part of what I would call the maturity of an enterprise architecture for any organization. And then the entire organization needs to really embrace enterprise architecture. And as you go along, you have that maturity going up, you're able to mitigate such occurrences. Then cloud and infrastructure rationalization. I've been in an environment where because of lack of rationalization of cloud utilization, you realize that everybody's spinning up a VM, everybody's spinning up a database instance. Before you know it, your monthly cloud costs are hitting millions of dollars. And now you're charged with the work of now bringing down the cost. So I've been in an environment where the cloud environments were over $1 million per month, and we were able to bring down that cost to around 200K per month by ensuring that we put in place governance around spinning up environments on a cloud environment. So this is very, very important, that governance, to help in bringing down that cost. So another part that I'd talked on at a very high level is the application portfolio management. You need to understand your application portfolio and categorize it accordingly. And once you are able to categorize your application assets, then you're able to know, am I going to go ahead and invest in this particular set of applications? Or am I going to just keep the lights on? So investing means that you're putting in upgrades, you're putting in, you're doing replatforming and all these kind of things. Or are you going to just maintain the application as is? Because, for example, like most of the core banking applications that are there, I usually see the strategy is around maintaining it as is, unless you're bringing on board capability with regards to regulatory or there's a security patch. But in terms of doing innovations around it, you'd want to do around it because it's running a lot of legacy technology, which will be very, very expensive to maintain. So you just try and keep the lights on as much as possible and innovate around it. So that's another category. Another one is eliminate. You may have some applications that are end of life, they're no longer useful. Like, for example, if you're running an ESB, Enterprise Service Bus, and you want to have something a bit more modern like an API gateway, that's a very good opportunity for you to eliminate it and introduce something more superior than it that will be able to give you better flexibility and agility in running innovation. Another one is you may want to review a particular application and put it in one of the other categories for proper actioning going forward. I talked about data architecture and information efficiency, where you may have multiple copies of data all over the place. Case in point, you may have supplier data in the ERP, you have supplier data in another application. How do you rationalize this data? How do you ensure that you don't have redundant data math? So in one of the organizations I was working in, I came in and found out that they're pulling data from the core applications into the data map, doing full pooling of data instead of incremental, and this used to lead to very, very high ETL costs and also storage costs. And also, so some of the ways you can be able to mitigate this using enterprise architecture and reduce this cost is look at how can you be able to have a master data manager, for example, where you're able to store all your master data and have you have it as a single source of truth. So you have your supplier data there, you have your customer data there, you have your item master there, you have your price master there, so that it makes it very easy for the channels. If you are like in a financial institution and you have multiple channels, and they need to quickly know for this particular product, what is the price for this? Instead of going to pull it from the core applications, get it from the master data. It makes it very agile for the developers when they want to consume that data. And having a canonical data format. What does this mean? Canonical data format is using a particular standard to represent how you define your APIs, for example. So if you want, for example, to pull data from an insurance master data, and they say that they are conforming to Accord, then you know these are the fields that are available. For banking, if they are conforming to BN, you know these are the various canonical data formats that are being used. If it's in communication, they're using ETOM. These are the data models that are used to get customer information, to get product information, and so on and so forth. Another important one that I normally try and enforce is information lifecycle. And this helps reduce your costs drastically. Because you have, especially if you're in the cloud environment, various storage types have different price tags. The faster your storage is, the more expensive it's going to be. The slower your storage, the slower it's going to be. And you have hot, medium, and cold data. So for your hot data, have it in the fast storage. For medium heat of data, have it in medium cost storage, and for the ones that you rarely use, have it in the archive. And based on the data retention laws, you look at how you can even be able to completely purge it. That's very, very important. And consolidation of data platforms, the data lakehouse approach. I usually try and advocate for this, especially when you have a lot of velocity of data coming in. You want to get insights quickly. You have a lot of unstructured data coming in. It's very, very important that you have that consolidation. So we've talked about architecture governance, very, very key. The architecture review board, very important in having those gates of ensuring that the architecture vision is being followed. The various domains, capabilities are avoided, and so on and so forth. Architecture, compliance reviews. This is when you're doing the implementation, you ensure that the various gates are in place. Architecture contracts, the formal agreements between development and architecture. And this also covers vendors, ensuring that the various architectural tenets and principles are being conformed with. And a capability assessment, very, very important for us to do it. Now, vendor management, never leave out also vendors from going through the various enterprise architecture governance checks that are in place, because they can also introduce technical debt into your environment, and you end up having high OpEx costs trying to keep the lights on technology that is very difficult to get personnel to support. Very important to keep the lights on, and so on and so forth. So it's important as you have EA in place to keep on checking the various metrics that are there. Cost per IT capability served, very important. A number of systems that are on a standard stack. This helps from, especially when you're introducing EA in an environment that has been going on for a while. In an organization that starts with EA, these parameters, so these metrics will normally look very good. The parameters are strong, but in an environment where EA has come on board and there are legacy systems running, some of these parameters are usually not very, very good. So architecture compliance, number of applications that are being commissioned, shadow IT incidents per quarter, very, very key to keep track of this, to be able to help inform the architectural strategy going forward. Okay, in the interest of time, let me not talk of the case study. I've given a few examples. So in terms of the various phases and the potential for cost reduction, you'll see that Phases B, C, and D. This is business architecture, data architecture, applications and technology architecture. They hold most of the weight in terms of bringing down your costs. So it's very, very important that from an architecture governance perspective, a lot of emphasis is put in those particular spaces. I think I talked about all this. So in terms of roadmap, you can look at having quick wins, 0 to 3 months, where you put down your inventory, identify the redundant applications, you establish your EA board, Enterprise Architecture Review Board, and you can adopt TOGAF as one of the standards, and then move to the foundation where you complete the various phases that I've talked about, define target architectures, and so on and so forth. And then you do your rationalization, the four boxes that I showed you: invest, maintain, eliminate. Very, very key. And then you have that feedback cycle with the metrics. You continue optimizing until you checking the metrics until you ensure that you're heading in the right direction. So that's all I had prepared for you, and these are the key takeaways. So using EA, you can see reduction of your IT spend by around 20-40%. And in my last assignment, I think last year I was able to save around $40 million by using EA. So this is not just the talk. This is something that I've actually lived by. And using the architecture development methodology, you're able to have phase-by-phase cost reduction. The application portfolio management is a very, very powerful tool. So please look at how you can be able to utilize it for your organization. And the architecture governance prevents future cost creep, and organizations that invest in EA will definitely outperform their peers in the IT space. So thank you very much, and back to you, Toyo.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Stanley. You have really educated us on how to be sure that we reduce cost at all costs, by all means. We reduce cost, and I believe this I believe this is what many organizations want to hear whenever you are bringing EA to them. They want you to tell them how effective is it going to be for them to reduce costs and to get a return on their investment. This is awesome. Thank you so much.